This is an excerpt from Startling Incidents and Experiences in the Christian Life by Enoch E.E.Byrum. Preface. Not long ago, a lawyer in one of our large cities was in serious trouble, and realizing that disaster awaited him unless he should be marvelously favored by Providence. In his extreme perplexity, he wrote a letter asking whether or not God ever answers prayer for anything other than healing of the body. Sometime previously, a banker who realized that his business would shortly go to the wall unless he could borrow a large sum of money desired to know if God would hear prayer for a person in such a matter of finance. There are problems and thousands of others who meet with perplexing problems in life, and whose troubles and anxieties are increased and prolonged because they do not know their privilege of taking such things to the Lord in prayer, and thereby being enabled to learn the will of God concerning the difficulties in which they are involved. No apology is to be made for the writing of this book and recording the incidents and experiences found therein, as Elijah's God is still the God of the universe. The same God to whom the apostles and those in the early days of Christianity prayed hears and answers prayer now, and nothing can stand before the prayer of faith. With few exceptions, the author is acquainted with the persons mentioned herein and has a personal knowledge of the things related. No doubt, some will question the truthfulness of some of the statements given in this volume, but the truth must not be withheld because of a few skeptics and unbelievers. Some doubted the words of our Savior and tried to disbelieve the miracles wrought by the apostles. A few selections have been made from other publications. Several kind persons whose names are given have kindly contributed a narration of their experiences, and several incidents have been selected from former books written by the author, namely The Secret of Salvation, How to Get It and How to Keep It, Travels and Experiences in Other Lands, etc. Also, poems have been selected from the Gospel Trumpet, but most of the incidents are from the writer's own life. It is the sincere desire and earnest prayer of the author that the narrations given in this volume will inspire every reader to a more profound belief in God of heaven, and that each may become awakened to his privileges in Jesus Christ, and through faith in him may be enabled to reach deeper depths and greater heights in the love of God than ever before. Anderson, Indiana, January 14th, 1915. Catching the Fisherman. In many places along the higher river are to be seen small boats or shacks of fishermen who spend year after year fishing and hunting. One afternoon in springtime, a party of 5 persons, of whom I happened to be one, decided to take 2 or 3 days vacation and spend the time in fishing along the Ohio River. Our equipment consisted of a rowboat, a tent, and a necessary camping and fishing outfit. After rowing down the stream a few miles, we stopped at what we considered a suitable place and pitched our tent. As we were not very successful in fishing, later in the afternoon, some of our party went further upstream to fish. During their absence, I became ill, and going a short distance from the riverside, I lay down upon a brush heap. After lying there for some time, I heard groanings in the distance. My first thought was that some of our member had been hurt, and although I was quite ill, I concluded I was not so ill, but that I could pray the prayer of faith for someone who might be in a worse condition. Therefore I arose and started in the direction from whence came the groanings. I had gone but a short distance when I saw a man dragging a double-barreled shotgun with the lock set so that the gun could be easily discharged. He did not, however, happen to be one of our party, but was a fisherman about 45 years of age, who was cursing, moaning, and groaning in such a manner as I had not heard in many days. He did not know that anyone was near, and upon my approach he stopped. I inquired the cause of his trouble. With an oath he replied that he was suffering more than death, and that he had decided to put an end to his miserable existence. Between his oaths, he told me that he was suffering excruciating pain, and that he had endured such from time to time for many years. Occasionally, for days at a time, he would have attacks of suffering that seemed almost beyond endurance. During these times he would become very irritable and would make life miserable not only for himself but for his wife and family. He had a good wife and 2 or 3 lovely children, but he said, "I intend to put an end to this life of torture." Then he showed me his gun, which he had so arranged that it could be easily discharged by a stick or brush while he was dragging it after him, and which he had placed against his body in such a position that, when discharged, it would put an end to his life. He said he hesitated to blow his brains out by pulling the trigger himself, as he did not wish to disgrace his family by killing himself in such a way that people would know that he had committed suicide. He wished it to appear that his death was accidental. After talking to him for a few minutes, I told him that the Lord was able to deliver him out of all his troubles and could not only take away his pain, but give him peace in his soul. As I told him of others whom God had delivered out of serious trouble, he became interested and finally consented to have prayer on his behalf, although he still occasionally gave vent to his feelings with an oath. I called the other brethren of our party, and when they had learned of the situation, we knelt down and prayed that the Lord might have mercy upon him and also touch his body and remove the pains. Almost instantly, he was relieved of his sufferings, and as we instructed him in the ways of salvation, conviction seized hold of him, and he himself began to call on God for pardon. Before we left him, he was rejoicing on account of the blessings of God upon his soul. He made inquiry concerning our success in fishing and said, "Come and go with me. I have a houseboat a short distance up the river and have my line set. You can have all the fish you can eat. My wife is a good cook, and you will not be in want so far as cooking your fish is concerned." Furthermore, he was anxious to bear the good news of his salvation to his wife. He also told us that near his houseboat was an excellent place to pitch our tent. We decided to move our outfit to the place he suggested, and he went home praising the Lord. Upon our arrival, his wife, who realized the great change in her husband, was rejoiced to meet us. She hurriedly prepared supper for us while we pitched our tent nearby. After supper, the fisherman, being desirous of learning all he could about the Bible and the Christian life, came and spent some time with us, and after a time his wife also came. As we were about ready to have our evening worship, she was invited to remain with us until after worship. As we read from the Bible, sang, prayed, and testified of the goodness of God, she also became convicted of her sins and began to call upon God for mercy. She soon received the witness of the pardon of her sins and began shouting the praises of God at the top of her voice. It was almost like a little camp meeting. The next morning, we arose early to prepare to return home. Just about the break of day, the fisherman and his wife came to us asking to be baptized, and straightway they went down into the water and were baptized. We went our way feeling that, while we had not been very successful in catching fish, we were well repaid by catching the fisherman.